and welcome to the Sunday's lesson. And we're going to be doing some precept written communications over Sirach chapter 1 verse 1. And without further ado, then we're going to go ahead and get into the lesson. So right here, then we have the verse, and I have it broken it down, by different segments. Then it's the same way where if you had a meal right in front of you on a plate, and you eat bite by bite. And that's also the point with this precept written communication, where we're pitting everything in segments to where nothing is missed, and we can fully dissect these verses. So right here, we're starting with the topic, which this topic, then it's all wisdom. And right on this other side, then I put the definitions of these written communication word labeling there so we can see this. So the topic, then this is the focus of the verse. It can be a person or a place or a thing. And just overall, then it's the subject of the conversation, which in this case, and it's all wisdom. Then we have the source, which is next. That's that from which something proceeds. And then we have the basis, which that's the foundation of anything, that on which a thing stands or lies, and something from which another thing develops, and something from which something else is established. So then we have this verse 1 of Sirach, then we have it labeled in 3 different segments. And for this lesson, and we're just going to focus on a topic, because then I want to keep this lesson short and just to the point, and then we'll finish the rest of Sirach 1 and 1 in another sitting. So just right with wisdom, then we have to define what wisdom is. So we'll put this right here, and we'll use the Bible precepts to define this wisdom. So we'll start, and we'll pick it up with Wisdom of Solomon, and we'll hit chapter 6 and verse 22. So this is Wisdom of Solomon chapter 6 verse 22. So as for wisdom, what she is and how she came up, so I will tell you and will not hide mysteries from you. So it's boom. So that's our first clue right there. But it will seek her out from the beginning of her nativity and bring the knowledge of her into light, and will not pass over the truth. So leaving this Wisdom of Solomon 6 and 22, then we have to go and pick up another key, which we'll see this when we head over to 1 Corinthians, and we'll look at chapter 2 and verse 7. So this is 1 Corinthians chapter 2, and we are going to look at verse 7. Pull this back up. But we speak the wisdom of God in a mystery. So there go that mystery again. Even the hidden wisdom which God ordained before the world unto our glory. So then I want to also, give like a personal applicational example so we can understand this some more. So then this is going to go back to my time when I was in the military as an aviator. So then we would fly out to the coast, either the east or the west coast. And what would happen is the jet that I was flying, and we had a communications team that was in the back. And once then we got to our area of operations, then we'd start talking to the people that we're talking to. And the jet, then it had a bunch of radios on there. Not going to get into exactly all of the capabilities of what that jet could do, because then that's classified information. But overall, then a jet, then it had a bunch of radios on there, and the transmissions that would leave off of the jet, then they were encrypted before it would hit the receiver. And the purpose of that is so only the receiver, it was given to them to know exactly what we were transmitting. And if anybody else in some sort of a interceptor or one of the enemies of the United States were to somehow seize or, intercept the message, then it would just be garbled up. Then they wouldn't understand what was said because it wasn't given to them to know that. So I'm just going to let that sit in for a second before then I move further. So what we're going to do is just now, then we'll define this wisdom and we'll define what a mystery is. So with wisdom, then it is God in a mystery. And for the mystery, the definition of this is mysteries, then that is a secret. Something unrevealed openly. Hidden from the eyes. Then we'll also put these precepts down right here. So we have Wisdom of Solomon 6:22, and we went to 1 Corinthians 2:7. And for this mystery, then I wanted to put a precept there for that. So we'll go over now to 1 Corinthians, and we'll hit chapter 14 and verse 2. So for he that speaketh in an unknown tongue speaketh not unto men, but unto God. For no man understandeth him, however, be it in the spirit he speaketh mysteries. So then now, comparing this to this illustration that I gave with my time back in the military, then if our communications were ever hijacked, the person, they're not going to understand it. However, then that is a real message that left that jet. Because when a person that was actually to whom it was committed and given to, when they receive the message, they have the same crypto keys that the comms team that was on the jet are using to encrypt the message. And once they use those same encryption keys to decrypt the message, they're going to understand what was said. So it's a mystery to the people that are without. So we'll put this right here, 1 Corinthians 14:2. So now then I want to pick this back up, and we'll start looking at some precepts to tie this illustration to what we're doing here with this precept written communication. So then we talked about how with my time in the military that we would encrypt these messages, so then it's only being committed to the person to whom it was given to. And for the people that are without, then they're not going to understand these things. So now, bringing this illustration to the Bible study, then we'll pick it up and we'll go with Luke chapter 8, and we'll look at verses 9 and 10. So that's Luke chapter 8 and verse 9 and 10. And his disciples asked him, saying, what might this parable be? So they're asking him a question. And he said, unto you it is given to know the mysteries. There go that mysteries again. Of the kingdom of God, but to others in parables. So it's going to be in the spiritual language that's going to have to be spiritually discerned. That seeing they might not see, and hearing they may not understand. So, leaving here, then we're going to now dive deeper into this, and I'm going to show you a breakdown of Psalms 147 and 19 and 20, which I was going to use for a teaching in June, but I'm going to now just break down the meats of this and just give this to you now. So Psalms 147 and 19 and 20. So he showeth his word unto Jacob. So there's Jacob, and that's the one that's supplanting the ways, and also our forefather Jacob that was married on to the Most High, and he had his way changed. So he showed his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. So you see how it flips in this verse. So in the verse, then it flips. So you have Jacob, then the one that's supplanting the ways, and then you have Israel, which that means that's Jehovah's servant. So just with our forefather, then he was surnamed and married to the Most High. And we, as Jacob, then we have to do as he did, because otherwise then we're just the sons of Jacob. And the problem with that is when you look down in verse 20, then it's telling us, so he has not dealt so with any nation. Which, when people typically, they run this verse, they'll just look at it foundationally, which we get what you're talking about when you define this other nation as Japhet and all of the other people of the world. But when we want to get personal and get real spiritual with Psalms 147 and 20, when it's saying any nation, then that's talking about us. And as for his judgments, these doctrines and teachings, they have not known them. Praise ye the Lord. So, just to qualify that statement that I just made, we have to dig and dive into this some more, which then I'm going to get ready to get into it. So just going back to verse 19, it's saying he showeth his word unto Jacob, which he did. Then I'm going to run a precept. So now then we're going to hit Matthew, and we'll look at chapter 24, and we'll look at verse 14. In this gospel of the kingdom, so this message of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. So there it is. So in all of our times appointed on this earth, then we're going to have the word come our way. So you won't be able to have an excuse. Then you won't be able to, in that day of that judgment, to say, well, then I never had an opportunity to hear the word. It's going to come your way. So once again, in this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. So it's going to come your way, and you'll have that opportunity to either repent or to stay the way that you are. And then shall the end come. Then that's fair for all of us to be able to hear it. So what we'll do is we'll now leave and hit Genesis and look at chapter 49 and verse 2. So gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob. Then that's what we are, the sons, servants of Jacob. So we have to do what he did and supplant our ways and overcome. And hearken unto Israel, your father. So, just to tie this in some more, we'll now hit Isaiah, and we'll look at 45 and verse 4. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect, I have even called thee by thy name, thy way. So I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. So then when we put this back and look at our father, Jacob, he made a promise to the Most High, he made a vow, and his name was changed. Now, The issue with us is we'll look at Deuteronomy and we'll hit chapter 32 and we'll go to verse 28. For they are a nation void of counsel, so neither is there any understanding in them. So then he's telling us what the issue is with us, that we have to gather ourselves unto him. So, now just looking at the Israel part, we'll go to 1 John. So we hit 1 John, and now we'll look at chapter 5, and we'll go to verse 4. And this is why I was saying that we have to overcome the same way that our forefather did. Jacob, then he was surnamed Israel, then he went from one state to the other. We have to do this as well. For whatsoever is born, so begotten of God, overcometh the world. And this is the victory that overcometh the world, our faith. So then our sincere belief in the message and the doctrine and the word. Because going back to what we've seen in Matthew, that this word is going to be preached throughout the world for a witness unto all nations. It came our way, then we have heard the word, but we have to do something else to be able to understand the judgments and the doctrines and teachings and the statutes. So, just to backtrack some more from Matthew 24 and 14, then we'll hit Sirach, and we will look at chapters 44 and verse 22 and verse 23. So with Isaac did he establish likewise for Abraham's his father's sake the blessings of all men and the covenant, and made it rest upon the head of Jacob. So he acknowledged him in his blessing. So you see that. And gave him a heritage. So did he receive that law of life and that knowledge, and divided his portions among the 12 tribes did he part them. So then he's telling us exactly what he did, and we'll look at this when we hit Genesis, and we'll go to chapter 32 in verse 28. So Genesis 32 and 28. Actually, we'll extend up and start at verse 27 and work our way down to 28. And he said unto him, what is thy way? And he said, Jacob. So then here's that first state. And he said, thy way shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. So now Jehovah's servant. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and has prevailed. Then we have to prevail too. This is not a free ride. Then we have something that we have to do. So look at this some more. And we'll hit Exodus chapter 19, and we'll hit verses 5 and 8. So Exodus 19 and then 5, and then we'll look at 8. So I'm going to show you all what we did. So now, therefore, if you will obey my voice, indeed, so in sincerity and in truth, that's what indeed means, and keep my covenant, then shall you be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. So verse 8, and all the people answered together and said, so all that the Lord has spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. So this is what we did. Then however, then there's more to this story. So we'll hit Isaiah and we'll hit chapter 29, and we'll look at verse 13. So Isaiah chapter 29 and verse 13. Wherefore the Lord saith, for as much as this people, so there we are right there, so that's me and that's everybody that's listening to this, draw near me with their mouth, and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. Then this is what we did. Then when we're being honest with ourselves, and this is exactly what we did, and there is something that goes along with that type of action, just doing things falsely. So now we have Sirach, and we'll look at chapter, we're going to pick it up at chapter 4, and we'll look at verse 17 through 19. So Sirach chapter 4 and verse 17 through 19. Well, actually, we'll hit 22. So now it's 17 through 20. So for at the first she will walk with him by crooked ways, and bring fear, so desire and dread upon him, and torment him with her discipline, until she may trust his soul, and try him by her laws. So we're going to be tried and tested. Then will she return the straight way unto him, and comfort him, and show him her secrets. So then she'll show you those mysteries. But if he go wrong, she will forsake him, and give him over to his own ruin. So that's right over there in when Thessalonians. Observe the opportunity, and beware of evil, and be not ashamed when it concerneth thy soul. But right here in verse 18, then that's only then when she can trust your soul, by trying you by her laws, then will she return a straight way unto you, and comfort you, and show you her secrets, those mysteries. So we're doing all of that just to return from where we came. And we'll look at Psalms 147 and 19 and 20 again. So he showeth his word unto Jacob, which we've all have seen the word, and it's up to us as to what we're going to do with it. Whether we're going to make that attempt to overcome in a fight, and to stay in the way. So he showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his doctrines and teachings unto Israel. So he has not dealt so with any nation. And for as his doctrines and teachings, they have not known them. So that's this right here. You're just going to get the word. But there's other things that you have to do to be able to get this right here. So, before then I check on everybody, we'll look at another precept. First Corinthians 15 and 40. So there are also celestial bodies, and both terrestrial. But the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another. So they're diverse one from the other. And then we'll extend to verse 50. Now this I say, brethren. So then he's getting ready to extend this mystery to us, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. And that's the end of that thought right there. Neither doeth corruption inherit incorruption. So then you're not going to come into this knowledge, neither are you going to come into all of these mysteries of this law of life that was given to us. not as flesh and blood, you won't. So, does everybody understand, what's going on there with the verses that I just presented with 1 Corinthians 15 and 40 and 50? Then we looked at Luke 8 and 9 and 10, and we also went to Psalms 147 and 19 and 20, and the other verses that we just hit, to expound on that some more. And, if we get any no's, and I'll then have to set up then another teaching so then we can end up understanding what's going on. All right, so now then we're going to move forward, and we'll look at John, and we'll pick it up at chapter 3, and we'll look at 1 through 3. So John chapter 3 and verse 1 through 3. So there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, so a ruler of the Jews. The same came to salvation by night. So that's problem number 1 right there. And said unto him, so Rabbi, then that is Jewish for teacher, we know that thou art a teacher come from God, for no man can do these miracles that thou doest except God be with him. So just going right back over to this night, this is a huge problem, because then you're approaching salvation the wrong way. He told us right in Genesis that the darkness he called night, and the light he called day. Now to build upon this slowly, just to see exactly, the issue with Nicodemus approaching salvation by night, then we're going to look at Songs of Solomon, and we'll look at chapter 3, and we'll look at verse 1. So by night, so that's by that darkness, no knowledge. On my rest, I sought him whom my soul promises. I sought him, but I found him not. And this is why. What agreement is there between light and darkness? None. So then we have to reform ourselves, or, we'll be in the same predicament. It's not going to change just because it's you. Then it's written right in here that if you're trying to seek him by a night, then you ain't going to find him. 2 Corinthians, we'll look at chapter 6, and we'll hit verse 14. So be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship has righteousness with unrighteousness? So that's a question, and this is what I wanted to show you in verse 14. And what communion has light with darkness? Which there's no sort of agreement between the two. So now then we'll hit 1 John, well, not 1 John, it's John, and we'll go to chapters 1 and 4 and 5. So in him was life, and the life was the light of men. So this is talking about the word. And the light shineth in darkness. So that's exactly why there's no sort of agreement between the two. Then they don't mix. And the darkness comprehendeth it not. Boom, then right there. So, just to go back, and now then we have to unpack these words. Right in Genesis, he told us, then the light, then he called the day, and the darkness he called night. So in the day, so the light shineth in darkness, so the night. In the night, darkness comprehended it not. So this is why, when you approach and trying to approach this word by night, then you're not going to understand or see the kingdom of God. Then you have to renew your mind, be transformed. So going right back to John chapter 3, then that's going back to John chapter 3 and verse 3. That's why this response was the way that it was. So salvation answered and said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be begotten again, he cannot perceive the kingdom of God. So then that knowledge and also the secrets of that law of life, then you're not going to come into it. You have to tell him more in verse 6. So we're now going to verse 6. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, so the terrestrial. And that's a semicolon. So then that's the end of that thought, and we're going to connect a completely separate thought to this. And that which is begotten of the Spirit is spirit. So terrestrial and the celestial, then those are different glories, then they're not the same. Now then we'll go to verse 8. So the wind, so the breath, the spirit, bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but cannot tell where it cometh, and whither it goeth. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit. So then he gave us then an illustration right here. Then it's with the wind. Then you can go out. So when you go out, then you can experience the wind. Then you can hear the sound that other objects makes as that wind strikes and blows up against that object, but you cannot see the wind, because then we cannot see things that are eternal, and the things that are not seen are eternal. The things that are seen are temporal. Then he's also comparing this and drawing this to what he's trying to get us to know. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit. So then if you're terrestrial, then you will not get the celestial. So right here in verse 11. So verily, verily, I say unto thee, we speak that we do know, and testify that we have seen, and yet ye receive not our witness. And you're not going to receive it. And, just to give more with Nicodemus in this situation, we'll tie a precept over from Sirach. So we'll look at chapter 3 and we'll go to verse 19. So many are in a high place, which going right back to John chapter 3, then we see that Nicodemus, and he was a ruler of the Jews and of renown. But, so there go that contrast right here, that but. Mysteries, so those secrets, the things that are unrevealed openly, are revealed unto the meek. So that was what was going on with Nicodemus, and it's also then it's going on with a lot of us. So now leaving Sirach 3 and 19, then we'll hit 1 Corinthians, and we'll go to chapter 2, and we'll look at verse 7 through 10. So, but we speak the wisdom of God in a mystery, even the hidden wisdom which God ordained before the world unto our glory, which none of the princes, so the rulers of this world, knew. And you could throw Nicodemus then right in there. For had they known it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory, then that's a fact. But as it is written, so eye have not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for them that love so promise him. But God has revealed them unto us by his Spirit. For the Spirit searches all things. So yeah, the deep things of God. And that's why we have to be begotten again, so then we can understand these things that are given to us. And otherwise, taking us right back to Psalms 147 and 19 and 20, then the word, it'll be shown to you. But you'll have to pit off the terrestrial and be celestial to understand this right here. There's something else that I want to show, just so this can tie in. So we're going to hit John, and we'll go to chapter 6, and we will look at verses 10 through 13. And salvation said, so make the men sit down. Now there was much grass, which go to Isaiah, then it tells you that the people is grass. So now there was much grass in the place. So the men sat down in number about 5,000. So you have this large multitude. And salvation took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes as much as they would. And when they were filled, he said unto his disciples, so gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. So then there was a lot of people that at that time, they were showed the word, but as far as all of those spiritual meanings, then these spiritual breakdowns, the spiritual aspect of it, they didn't get it, because otherwise there wouldn't have been no fragments that they're left behind. Baskets would have been empty. So therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, and the 12 baskets full of all of these fragments, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. So nothing should be remained. Then if you're gathering that full portion, understanding everything that's being said. So then likewise, with these disciples, which is these prophets that are speaking, to those that are giving, they're going to understand these mysteries and these grave sentences and these parables. But, those that are without, you would hear these words, but as far as the spiritual, like the doctrines and teachings and the statutes, then you won't get it. So, what we're going to do is then we have to put these precepts in here. So, right for wisdom, then we'll put Luke chapter 8 and verse 9 and 10, because we went there. Then we'll put John chapter 6 and verse 12. Then we'll put Psalms 147 and 19 and 20. We'll put the rest up here. So we went to 1 Corinthians 15, 40, and 50. And we went to John chapter 3, 1 through 3, 6, 8, and 11. And we went to 1 Corinthians 2 and verse 7 through 10. So I'll Put that right there, and then I'll give us all then a sec to jot that down before then I move on. So now what we'll do is we're going to, there's another word that we have seen quite a few times throughout this lesson, and that was knowledge. Then we have to define what knowledge means. And knowledge, then the definition of that is so that's our definition of knowledge. So the familiarity and the meaning in translations of parables. So just with the other definitions, and I'm getting ready to qualify this with precepts as well. So we'll pull back up our side Bible, our pocket Bible, and we'll go to Sirach, Sirach chapter 5 and verse 15. So, I did that. Alright, so Sirach 5 and 15. So be not ignorant of anything in a great matter or a small. So now then we'll get in a little closer to this. So it's telling us to not be ignorant, so to having a lack of knowledge of anything in a great matter or small. And we're going to see exactly why then this is important not to be ignorant. So we're going to hit Exodus. Let's use this right here. And we'll look at verse 5 through 7. So when the Spirit of God descended in the cloud, so in the body, and stood with him there, and proclaimed the way of the Lord. And the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, so the Lord. So the Lord God, and merciful and gracious, long-suffering in abundance and goodness and truth. So keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty. So there we are right there. And we'll stop right there at that semicolon, because whether then you were ignorant or not, then you're still guilty. So this is why then we can't be ignorant of anything in the matter great or small. So we'll see this right here. So this knowledge of word functioning some more. So we hit Leviticus. We'll go to chapter 4, and now we'll look at verse 27 through 29. And if any one of the common people sin through ignorance, while he doeth somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which ought not to be done, and be guilty. So there it is right there. No, even through ignorance, then you're still guilty. And in that thought with that semicolon there, so we're getting ready to tie another thought on. Or if his sin, which he has sinned because you did it, come to his knowledge, so your familiarity, then he shall bring his offering, so a kid of the goats, because we were hard-headed. a female without blemish. So then you're going to present your body as that living sacrifice, holy and acceptable, for his sin which he has sinned. And he shall lay his hand, so his power, upon the head, so the thought of the sin offering, and slay the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering. So then we see that right there. That's what we have to do. So now then we'll hit John, and we'll look at chapter 15 and verse 22. So if I had not come and spoken unto them, they had not had sin. But now they have no cloak for their sin. Because then this word right here, then when it comes to you, then it's going to show you then what we all did, what we're not supposed to do, and what we're supposed to do that's pleasing unto him when his word comes to you. So then you won't, it'll be right there. Then when you start hearkening to this word, learning, meditating, occupying your time with this word, all of the things that we have done that we are not supposed to do, it's going to come to your familiarity. So right here in verse 24, then we'll look at verse 24 as well. If I had not done among them the works which no other man did, so flesh, they had not had sin. But now have they both seen, so you perceived and hated both me and my Father. So he's making it known right there. Then when this word comes your way, then all of the things that we have done in ignorance, it's going to come to your familiarity. And if you continue to do those things, it's telling you how you really feel about them. Doesn't matter what you say out of your mouth. Because by doing those works that he despises, and it's telling you right there where you stand with him. You hate him. So now then we're going to shift gears, and we will look at some other things. So now then we'll go to Sirach, and we'll hit chapter 14 in verse 21. So he that considereth her ways in his heart shall also have understanding in her secrets, so in her mysteries. And this is why. So leaving there, then we'll hit Wisdom of Solomon, and we'll look at chapter 8, and we'll go to verse 4. For she is privy to the mysteries of the knowledge of God, and a lover of his works. So then the Spirit. So this is why then we have to be begotten of the Spirit to understand the mysteries that are committed unto us. Because otherwise, then to be seen, then you won't see, and hearing, you won't understand. So for she is privy to the mysteries of the knowledge of God. So all of this knowledge, then you're going to have to unravel these parables. So let's look at this some more. So we're going to go to Sirach chapter 1. Let me at 8, I need chapter 1. And we will look at verse 25. Just to qualify that statement. So the parables of knowledge are in the treasures of wisdom. So it's telling you the parables of knowledge are in the treasures of wisdom. But godliness is an abomination to a sinner. And I'm going to let that sit in for a sec. So the parables of knowledge, so the meaning and translations of all of these parables are in the treasures of wisdom, so these mysteries. But godliness is an abomination to a sinner. So now then we're going to pick it up at Jeremiah chapter 3 and 15. We are in the book of Jeremiah chapter 3 and 15. There's something interesting that I wanted to show. So, and I will give you pastors, so those are feeders, according to mine heart, which shall feed you with knowledge, so with those meanings and translations of the parables and understanding. So then he's providing this service right to us. And with these feeders that are out here, then they're going to not be doing it for filthy lucre. So then it's all free of charge. So now we'll hit 1 Peter and we'll look at chapter 5 and verse 2. So feed the flock of God which is among you, taking the oversight not by constraint, but willingly. So it's not by constraint, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind. So neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being examples to the flock. Because we're not supposed to be taking a constraint, not taking constraint. Then we're just doing the service, just out here feeding. But he does have then his pastors that are out there that are feeding his flock with knowledge and understanding. So what we have to do is now we'll go to Sirach and we'll go to chapter 8 and verse 8 and 9. So despise not the discourse of the wise. So we're not despising this discourse, but acquaint thyself with their proverbs. For of them, so these proverbs that are coming from the wise, thou shalt learn instruction and how to serve great men with ease. So miss not the discourse of the elders, for they also learnt of their fathers. So they was absorbing and acquiring all of these meanings and translations. And of them thou shalt learn understanding, and to give answer as needeth requireth. So going from there, we'll go to Sirach, the same book, and we'll hit chapter 6, and we will pick it up at verse 34 through 37. Sirach 6 and 34 through 37. So I'm going to zoom this in real quick. So stand in the multitude of the elders and cleave unto him that is wise. So that's what we're doing. Then in the multitude of these elders, you got the end of that thought, another one, and cleave unto him that is wise. So be willing to hear every godly discourse, and let not the parables of understanding escape thee. And if thou seest a man of understanding, get thee betimes unto him, and let thy foot wear the steps of his door. So your desire wear the path of his entrance. Let thy mind be upon the ordinances of the Lord, and meditate continuously in his commandments. And he shall establish thine heart, and give thee wisdom at thine own desire. So then we're not going to be missing the discourse of the wise and of these elders and these parables of understanding. You know, you got to write stuff down, and you just can't be just sitting up here listening, and then you forget these things, and then you have to run back to the teacher and try and figure out what they said at that time. So you have to really meditate on these parables, and you don't let these things escape thee, because you have to crack these parables to get the translations and the meanings. So, before I go too far, there's something I have to go back and attract to, because we need to go to Sirach 1 and 25 and look at it. So the parables of knowledge, so the parables of the meanings and translations are in the treasures of wisdom. So it's telling us that right there. And that's why then we can't let them escape us. But godliness is an abomination to a sinner. Another thing that we'll go back to is we'll look at Sirach 6 and 37, and it's letting us know that we have to let our minds be upon the ordinances of the Lord and meditate continuously in his commandments. So he shall establish thine heart and give thee wisdom at thine own desire. So we're going to have to put our own footwork into this as well and do our studies, which, leaving here, then we'll hit Sirach, and we'll now go to 39 and 1 through 3. But he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High, and is occupied in the meditation thereof, will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient, and be occupied in prophecies. And he will keep the sayings of the renowned men. See, then you're not letting that stuff escape you. And where subtle parables are, he will be there also. He will seek out the secrets, so the mysteries of grave sentences, and be conversant in dark parables. Now, there's another way where we can acquire wisdom. So, get this up. Gosh, man, this is being difficult. I'm just going to have to crack it at another time, as this thing is being difficult with me right now, man. So now we'll hit Romans. We'll hit chapter 1. And we'll look at verse 20. So, zoom this in. So, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So I'm going to let that sit in for just about 5 seconds. And we'll tie this to where I'm trying to get us at. So now we'll hit Proverbs, and we'll look at chapter 6, and we'll go to verse 6. And this is like an example. Actually, 6 and Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 6 through 8. So go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise. So then I'm tying this right to where we left with Romans chapter 1 and verse 20, because then with all of the things that God created, then even an ant, then you can get wisdom from all of the things that he's created, because he set all of these creations in their ways. Then all we have to do is just take the time to go out and study and consider the things that he's created, and you'll get wisdom as well. So now going back to this ant in verse 7, which having no guide, overseer, or a ruler. So then you ain't got no man in no church ruling over you. Provided her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. So then it's telling you right there, then this is what we have to do. But we want a man to end up teaching us, than a man that doesn't have a Bible in his hands and it's just giving you like a sermon. So then we can't be lazy. Then we have to do our studies and gather up this knowledge. Then we can do these things, by considering things that the Creator and He's made. Then He also has His pastors out here, and He also is commanded we have to do our studies. So, leaving there, then I'm going to take us over 2 Thessalonians. And we'll look at chapter 3 and verse 10. So 2 Thessalonians 3 and 10. And this is that thing with the and. For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat. So then when you see how those ants are operating during the summertime, they're providing a meat and not having no overseer. This is what He's trying to show you. Then we have to be diligent about our Father's business. And there was one verse that I missed with Jeremiah, right after leaving Jeremiah 3 and 15. And I almost missed it, but then I'm gonna have to start back over. So, and I will give you pastors according to mine heart, which shall feed you with the meanings and translations of these parables and understanding. So, we'll see, since I wanted to show like an example because I almost forgot it. So we're going to go to Acts chapter 8, and we'll look at verse 29 and 30. Then the Spirit said unto Philip, so go near and join thyself to this chariot. And Philip ran thither to him, and heard him read the prophet Isaiah, and said, understandest thou what thou readest? And he said, so verse 31, how can I, except some man shall guide me? Don't forget what we looked at in 1 Peter 5 and 4. So then not these men that are trying to do it for filthy lucre, trying to exhort themselves as lords over God's heritage. Then that it's not what God's servants are supposed to be doing. Then you're feeding the flock of God of a ready mind and not for filthy lucre. And now I have to add another precept onto this, because then I do not want none of my words twisted up. Then I want it to all be clear. So I'm in my Bible now, and just give me a second, then I'm gonna find this precept, and then we'll show it, and we will be done. So we're going to hit Sirach, and we'll go to chapter 32 and 1 and 2. If thou be made the master of a feast, so for these learnings, lift not thyself up, boom, but be among them as one of the rest. So then you ain't no higher than all of the people that's learning and feeding. Then you just have a job to do, but afterwards you sit your butt down. You're not supposed to be lords over God's heritage. Take diligent care for them, and so sit down. And when thou hast done all thy office, take thy place, that thou mayest be merry with them, and receive a crown for thy well ordering of the feast. So then I just had to throw that one in there. So my words, they won't be twisted up. All right, so with that being said, then that's the end of this lesson. And I'm gonna write these tips in here, and if you have any sort of questions or comments, then you can send them to myself or Deacon Smith or Deacon Emmanuel, and we'll get to you at our earliest convenience. So then we went to Jeremiah, we went to 3 and 15, we went to Acts 8 and 29 and 30 or 1. We also went over to Sirach. Well, let me put them in order. So we'll go to Sirach chapter 8 and verse 8 and 9. Then we Sirach chapter 6 and verse 34 through 36. Then we also went to Sirach 6 and 37. Then we went over to Sirach 39, 1 through 3. Then we went to Romans 1 and 20. We went over to Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 6. I believe it was all the way through 8. And then we hit 2 Thessalonians, which instead of I'll just put a parentheses there. Thessalonians 3 and 10. So then I bid you all then a shalom, and until next time.
You know what she told me?
Are you gonna
She told, check it out, this is what she said. She said,
say that you're gonna be?
she said she wants some Marvin Gaye, some Luther Vandross, a little Anita, but definitely set this party alright.